Hey everybody, this is Tom from Thomas Aaron Photography, and I am pretty excited about today's video. There are a lot of videos online discussing how the photographer makes all the difference and camera gear is really not all that important. And while I generally believe that that is true, I'm a little concerned that it might be too broad of a statement. For example, I know exactly what I am capable of with my $6,000 working camera, professional lenses, and top-end gear. What I am not sure of is what I am capable of doing with this. It is a 2005 Kodak C340 Easy Share. So this is an 18-year-old point and shoot 5 megapixel camera with very little in the way of adjustments. And today I'm going to just go take a couple of general photos around the studio and compare the results. And we're going to see how they come out. And I do not know. I have never even shot this camera. So you're going to find out with me what I can do, and we'll see what this camera can do. So without any further ado, folks, let's get started. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to be shooting with my Canon 1DX Mark III with a Sigma 50mm lens on it. I'm not really sure what focal length is on the point and shoot. I know it's probably pretty wide, but I'm not really trying to match the two cameras up. The goal isn't to find out what happens if you dumb down the expensive camera, then which one shoots the best. The thing is to see which one I can take the best pictures with. So the pictures are going to necessarily be a little bit different, but I'm looking more for just which one I can make good pictures with. So the other thing is the point and shoot only produces JPEG images, whereas this produces RAW and JPEGs. So there's another advantage when it comes time to edit these pictures. But let's see what happens. Down. Hey, Rooster. Hey, Rooster. Gotcha. What a good boy. Let me see what it looks like. Pretty good. Let's adjust our aperture a little bit. You want to? Okay. Back, 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 down. No, back, back. Scoot back, Rooster. Down. All right. That's good enough. Rooster. Rooster. Yo! Oh, do you want a treat? Good shot. See what that looks like. Yeah, that'll work. Okay. Now we're going to try the point and shoot and see what happens. So I can get Rooster back inside because he seems to be cold. He gets cold. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to put this thing in portrait mode. That's the best I know to do with it. And we'll see how that goes. It does have an optical zoom on it, so that may help us too. Rooster, down. Down. All right, here we go. Yo! Down. Yo! Oh, it doesn't look too bad. We'll see what it looks like when I pull it off and put it on the computer and edit it. Okay, I'm gonna go put Rooster away and set up for the next shot, and then I will be right back. Okay, now we're gonna be taking a picture of my neighbor Steve's antique truck. So thank you, neighbor Steve, for that. Appreciate it. And same rig. So first the 1DX Mark III and 50 mil Sigma, and after that the point and shoot. And for this shot, I'm just going to be putting it in auto mode. There's not really any specific mode that jumps out at me for taking pictures of a truck. So I'll just work on getting a good composition and seeing how it goes. I'm not even sure if it took a picture. Let me check. Yeah, it did. I'm going to take one more just for good measure. Okay. Now let's go back to the studio, get these on the computer, and see what the heck we've got. Okay, folks, it's time to review our images and see what we have. Let's get started. Okay, this first image that you see up on the screen, this is the out of camera image from the 1DX Mark III, so the really expensive pro camera. A few things I want you to notice about it before we look at the images from the other camera. First, notice that there is really good background blur. Notice that the detail in the highlights of his graying muzzle, the details are very nice. And also notice that the focus is really, really nice, very precise. Okay, those are also, you know, the sky's not blown out. Everything looks pretty good. I mean, it needs a little editing because it's a, you know, basically a raw file, but you could almost just print this out and hang it on your wall. Okay, now for the first picture from the point and shoot, the Kodak C340. All right, here we have it. So it's pretty underwhelming. It is a JPEG and it is only 5 megapixels, which presented a lot of problems to me editing this image out because number one, I had to resize it. Number two, I had to sharpen it. And even then, it's not great. And I'll explain more. And also the color detail in it is so lacking that it was hard to edit for color. Let's look at the same three things we looked at on the other image. So if you look back here, there's no screen blur or no background blur at all. Background's pretty crystal clear because those cameras have a very, very tight aperture. If you look at his muzzle, it is completely blown out. There is virtually no detail whatsoever in it. And if you look at his eyes, they are not particularly sharp. And if you zoom in, I'm sure you cannot see this on YouTube, but it is very pixelated. Like I can see all the individual pixels here. And I'm zooming it in a lot, but you can't see that in a 20 megapixel photo, right? But in a 5 megapixel photo, it's very obvious. So one of the things that I did is the first thing is I ran it through Topaz's gigapixel image enlarger. And so when I did that, you notice that it doesn't change much in the image, but we'll see. Why isn't it enlarging? There it goes. If you enlarge and zoom in on the eye, there's no more pixelation, right? So that software did a pretty darn good job of enlarging. And then, in addition to that, I ran it through Topaz's AI Sharpen software. And when I did that, it did sharpen the eyes a little bit. They're still not really crisp. But one of the problems with the sharpening was that if you zoom in on his muzzle, things just look really grungy. It's just not a lot of good detail. Also, if you look along the edges of his ears and his leg, it's got kind of this weird hard edge. Not real pleased with the results. And I don't really blame that on Gigapixel or Topaz's Sharpen AI. I mean, it did what it could with what it was given, I guess. All right. So when I was shooting with that camera, I could not really tell. There's nothing in the viewfinder to tell me if anything's overexposed, like his muzzle. And when you look at the picture on the back of the little tiny LCD screen, you really can't tell either. So once I put this on the computer and looked at it and saw how blown out it was, I actually went into the camera and dropped the exposure compensation. It has that. I dropped it by 1 stop, and the results were horrendous. So here is an example. There's dropped by 1 stop, and if you zoom in on it, I don't know again if you can see it on YouTube, but the noise level is out of this world. Lots of noise all over his face, in the sky. And so I then ran that through Topaz's denoising software, Denoise AI, I think it's called, to see what that would do. And the result is that it did get rid of most of the noise in the sky, but his face and stuff is just still really bad. So, basically the exposure compensation on the camera it's virtually useless, okay? So the image I ended up editing was the one that I had enlarged and run through the sharpening software. So that's the one I'm going to end up editing, okay? Now moving on. After I edited the image from the 1DX Mark III, here's what I got. So hopefully you can see that well. Now that I would put on my wall. He looks real majestic, good highlights, good shadows, rich color, all of that. So editing came out really nice. Now when I edited the image from the point and shoot camera, this is literally the best I could do, and I worked on it for about an hour and tried a lot of different things, but that's what I came up with. Now, honestly, it's not horrible. I wouldn't use it for anything, and if you just had it on your cell phone to show to your friends, it might be all right. But if you zoom in on it, he's still got kind of hard edges. His eyes are sharp, but they're a little bit funky. His muzzle's blown out. I just couldn't do anything about that. And I'll tell you this, too, that the color of the grass, when I tried to darken the color of the grass and make it more like this, super, super hard. Had to try a bunch of different stuff to get that to happen, simply because there's just not enough color information in that 5 megapixel JPEG to really do much. And I will mention on both of these images, I did drop in a sky and kind of clean the houses out of the background because I just wanted to play with Photoshop's sky replacement and generative AI. So that's a good story for another time, but for the moment, this is the difference. So expensive camera, 18-year-old point and shoot camera. So for an 18-year-old point and shoot, I guess not horrible. But I kind of feel like I was putting lipstick on a pig when I was editing this picture. So I'll just say that, okay? All right, now let's move to the truck photos. Those are a bit more interesting with slightly different results, I think, okay? So here is the shot from the 1DX Mark III. And one thing I want you to know, so, you know, it's all nice. Everything's sharp, non-pixelated, super good detail, good highlights, good shadows, all of that. So it came out pretty good. I want you to notice, if you can see it on YouTube, the wires here on this tower, the support wires. You can see these wires really well. Just hang on to that thought. Okay, here's the image from the point and shoot. Boom. Notice you cannot see the wires. They actually blew out. And I thought about going back over with the point and shoot and retaking this picture, dropping the exposure compensation. But after seeing what that did to the dog, I decided not to, that it was just a waste of time. So this is the image that I have to work with. So again, same as with the dog, when you increase the size, super pixelated, okay? So this image wouldn't be good for much of any size, but it's pretty pixelated. So what did I do? I ran it through the enlargement software. And when I did that, when you zoom in on it, no more pixelation. The software did really good on that. And then I ran it through the sharpening program because, you know, I can see all the details on this truck, but when I look at certain areas, it's just a little soft. And I was focusing right in this area around the headlight and the corner of the grill. And those areas are they're kind of soft. So I ran it through the sharpen software, and then when you zoom in on it, shoot, that's way better. That looks a fair amount nicer. So that's the image I ended up editing. So now this is kind of interesting. Here is the edit from the 1DX Mark III. Bam, and again, I dropped in a sky. Just thought it would look good and wanted to play. I hadn't really had a chance to play a whole lot with the sky replacement functionality of Photoshop, and I think it did a pretty good job. So that's the image from the 1DX Mark III, and I really like it. And when I showed it to my wife, she's like, "Oh, we got to print that out and put it on a canvas and hang it on the wall." And I said, "Yeah, let's do that, and we're going to send a copy of it to my neighbor Steve, who owns the truck as well, for letting us go over there and play around in his yard." Now, here is the edited image from the point and shoot. Bam, and that is not bad at all. I actually really like it. I did basically all the same edits, although the sky I dropped in was slightly different. Now, one thing I do want to point out is this stuff that blew out, the wires and this was blown out, this I don't know, the support metal, and I actually rebuilt them in Photoshop. And I will not sit here and tell you that I did the best job in the world of it, but I don't think most people would notice. If I printed this out and put it on a canvas, I don't think most people, your average viewer, would notice. So I've got to tell you, with this image, I'm actually pretty darn satisfied. So my assessment of the camera is this. Does gear matter? Yes, it does. An 18-year-old 5 megapixel sensor, I can outperform that camera and that sensor. Now, if we were talking about a more modern point and shoot camera, what do they call them, crossover cameras or whatever, if we were talking about something like that, I might not be able to outperform it, because then you're dealing with a camera that is of the same era, right? A modern sensor, modern focus system, and all of that stuff. And so, yeah, I mean, I think I could probably do as good with a modern point and shoot, or even one 5 or 6 years old, or maybe even older, than I could with this one. Okay, this one was it just has limitations, simple as that. And even I'm not the best photographer in the world. I don't make any claims like that, and I can outperform that camera. Now, what is that camera good for? Well, number one, it eats through batteries like you would not believe. So in that sense, it's not worth a whole lot in my opinion. But it'll take decent pictures. Like you can get decent pictures of it, of certain things in certain lighting. But I don't think you could use this as a general purpose camera to just go into any environment with any lighting and just take this great shot. Whereas with a modern sensor and a modern camera, you can do a lot more to make your image come out really nice. So that's my take on it. So does gear matter? Yeah, it does, but no, it doesn't. It depends on the gear you're talking about. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it. If you've made it this far through the video, I'd like to ask you to please subscribe. I got more cool stuff coming out. And anyway, thanks again, guys. Have a great day.